Good afternoon. I want to thank everyone for being here today as we head down the home stretch of this year's unusual session. I'm joined by my colleagues to outline a package of some common sense legislation to protect crime victims by fixing the governor's out-of-control parole board and keeping New York's most dangerous violent criminals where they belong, which is behind bars. You have some photos of some of New York's most infamous. You can contrast our push to restore common sense and public safety with the latest proposals by my colleagues across the aisle, which are, as usual, far more focused on solving the problems of the criminals who are behind bars. They are more concerned, and their package is more focused on fixing David Chapman's problem than on addressing the issue that relates to the victims, or very often, the victims' families who remain behind because the victims are no longer here. Elder parole, fair and timely parole, clean slate. All of these policies or bills have nice names, and they are the latest proposals that prioritize criminals over their victims. We have seen the parole board take a drastic left turn in recent years, absent any changes from the state legislature. Releasing cop killers like Herman Bell, Anthony Bottom, and Richard Rivera. I sponsor a bill to reform New York's out-of-control parole board by allowing for the removal by a majority vote of the legislature, requiring 3 or more members to personally interview potential parolees, and I require a unanimous decision to grant parole. We also have several bills by my colleagues that protect those who have been victimized and give them a stronger voice. Something that often gets overlooked when these violent criminals are being considered for parole is the trauma that victims and families are forced to live over and over again. Every time their victimizer comes up for parole, they have to send a victim impact statement. Every time they have to relive that possibility that individual will be released back into the community. This package of bills, sponsored by my colleagues, would allow victim impact statements to be video recorded and require all members of the board to review all victim statements prior to hearing. Expands the pool of impacted who are allowed to submit written statements in support or opposition to granting of discretionary release. Protects the confidentiality of victim statements, authorizes parole boards to require violent felons to serve maximum term, and increases the time from 24 to 60 months between consideration for violent offenders. We feel this is a strong package that holds the parole board more accountable to the voices of victims and makes sure that those victims are prioritized and protected. Our common sense approach is in direct contrast to the radical pro-criminal policies being heralded by the majority as reforms. These proposals come at a time when crime rates are up in major metro areas, a direct result of previous criminal justice reforms. I want to restate that. The increase in crime, just the other day, the governor said the 3 biggest issues facing New York City, this is Governor Cuomo, crime, crime, and crime. Ironically, he apparently doesn't know what the solution is or is unaware of why that is happening. It's happening because of laws that he signed. This is not an accident. New York City is not engulfed in violent crime. Buffalo is not engulfed in violent crime. Rochester is not engulfed in violent crime by accident. It's engulfed in violent crime because of the policies and the so-called reforms that we are pushing. The first wave was to make it more difficult for people who are arrested to ever end up or set foot in jail. Now, these policies are focused on people who are in jail, who've been convicted, and basically getting them out sooner and faster. Their latest reforms would automatically make some of New York's most notorious, dangerous criminals eligible for parole, including cop killers, spree killers, and child killers. Son of Sam, Colin Ferguson, Bucky Phillips. These are people who belong behind bars for the rest of their lives. It is time for our colleagues on the other side of the aisle to reject the unsafe path they have us headed down and join us in our efforts to restore common sense and public safety here in the state of New York.